Okay, so here's my fourth and final corrections video of this series. Probably going to go a little bit more in length on this particular video because there's more that I want to talk about with the heroes, and definitely how this was geared more towards beginners and not necessarily experienced players. And definitely the meta has changed even with the addition of Gladiator as well too. So let's get this thing started. All right, so now let's start off with the talent hero. So right off the start, you guys may find this a little bit controversial, but you have to eliminate one hero right from the get-go. And why is that? Because you can only select 3, and you've got 4 choices. In order to actually understand why the talent hero is not part of the selection for your best hero team, it's actually going to take much more than me just kind of explaining it right from the start. What we're going to want to... This is complete and utter BS. The talent hero is now one of the meta heroes. Again, I want to be clear about this entire video. This was geared more towards beginners and to make the game easier for them when they first start. And it has to do with trying to be a little bit more less susceptible to actually damage. So you're so it makes the game a little bit easier when you don't understand abilities. I will explain all this as we go through it, but talent is an incredibly good hero because of the abilities. But if you're a beginning player, talent is going to be the hardest one for you to use. For the strength hero, there is one that I feel that stands out over the other one. Before I move forward in the actual hero selection, if you guys remember from my previous videos, we talked about your 1 offensive stat and your 2 defensive stats as being your base stats. So we're going to balance that across the other heroes. The best skill is evasion. Right behind that is speed. And then vitality is not going to play. Again, a correction from the other video. Speed is absolutely the most important meta reason for as to why you select heroes in this game. Evasion is not a reason why you're selecting the hero. That's a big correction for this as well too. I would select the blacksmith as your hero of choice. Okay, so here's the one thing that I wanted to really emphasize here with the strength heroes. The thing is with council is that the strength heroes are very close to each other, and actually the biggest issue I have with Gladiator is that Gladiator made the entire strength class for the rest of them null and void because Gladiator is so incredibly strong. So Gladiator's got like 70 speed. It's got 2 of the best starting weapons in the game. When I say 2 is the reason why that's incredibly important is you can actually swap out one of those weapons to one of the other heroes, whether it's your trapper or if you're playing with something else. He also has glory, and everything about him is just so much better because he also has entertain too. So he's got all the best abilities. He's the fastest hero. He also starts off with 2 more weapons. So Gladiator made everything like it's just a lock pick for you to pick Gladiator. But if you have council, like I play on both. The thing is woodcutter, monk, hobo, which is not really talked about here. The problem is with hobo's incredibly fast. But with the 2 focus and a very crappy starting weapon, he's hard to use right at the very beginning of the game. And then Busker is in there as well too. In fact, I mainly play Busker as my strength hero typically. I'm doing a cellar run, so that's why you're seeing Monk. But you could put Hobo in there. That's totally fine. Woodcutter is totally fine as well too. They're all very close to each other. Blacksmith actually is probably the worst of them. But the reason why I had beginners use Blacksmith is because Steadfast does help them stay alive a little bit more when they're first learning how to play the game, because they're not like properly understanding all the abilities and stuff like that. But ultimately what I like is Busker and Hobo kind of near the top. Monk and Woodcutter is kind of secondary, but Monk can be used in a lot of other different types of play styles. So all 5 of those are generally pretty good, but Gladiator destroys all of them. And I'm going to go a little bit more in depth in terms of like what I talked about in the corrections video, glory, and something that I want the developers to really take into consideration with FTK 2, and what my only like small little beef I really have with FTK.
So now into the intelligent hero. The scholar does have the best stats starting off with. Party heal is so important that I don't really care. Now, for those of you that are starting off in the game and do not have the lore to purchase the herbalist, or have not downloaded the expansion to be able to get the monk, you're going to have to settle on the scholar. Your scholar is a better hero to select, so you have a little bit more versatility in terms of the weapon choices as you go throughout the game. But the problem is when you get locked into using a particular weapon, I would much rather have the herbalist to start, so then you have total flexibility in terms of the weapons that you choose. So even though the stats are a little bit lower on the herbalist, I would select the herbalist as your hero. Now what we're going to get into is
okay,
the awareness.
well, this is already the biggest correction, which I kind of already did in one. You don't need to have party heal equipped with a particular or you don't need to have it like fully equipped like you would with having the herbalist. Herbalist is very good for beginning players, like I mentioned in the first corrections video. I'm not going to go back through it again. Scholar is the best hero to select in intelligence. It's all about speed, and this is why speed is so important. Why the third corrections video about speed becomes so important is the fact that he's just so much faster than the herbalist, and it also has higher stats as well too. On top of that too, refocus, when you learn how to use focus, is actually more important than actually like gathering herb or party heal, because you get party heal through weaponry and all that kind of stuff. Scholar's the best. Herbalist is not. Herbalist is very good for beginners, so they can learn about gathering herb and party heal.
As hero, this one actually is a simple choice. It's because the top hero in this slot requires no lore. All the stats are the highest, and on top of it too, he's got 4 different skills. The skills that are actually in the heroes below, outside of looking at someone like the herbalist or party heal, but again, you've already selected the herbalist in the intelligence slot, there is really no reason to select anyone other than the hunter. So let's wrap this all up into a nice little bow so you guys understand why those selections were also made in conjunction with the overall team aspect. You have a strength hero that will take on all of the damage. You have an intelligence hero that can heal all your heroes. And then you have an awareness hero that ends up avoiding all damage as well too. The hunter is selected just because of its sheer base stats. Nothing to do with the skills. And what some of you that are new to the game may not understand is like, why would you select the awareness hero over the talent hero? And it's mainly because of evasion. Now,
so that's again entirely wrong too. So like, yes, the evasion is important for beginning players, but what's so wrong with that is people just misuse talent heroes when they're first playing the game. Being able to utilize rush appropriately, you also get the gold multiplier, which is incredibly strong. Having talent is actually better than awareness. The big issue with awareness heroes is the weaponry is so weak, and therefore you're much better off having Trapper. So like, the reason why Trapper is so good, it's actually kind of misleading because it's actually kind of labeled as an awareness hero, is it's the highest speed talent hero. The one thing that I've kind of disagreed with Mike and Sheldon, it's probably our only disagreement that we have. I think the entire time Minstrel was never meta to begin with. This was prior to Gladiator coming out. I think Trapper was always the sneaker pick, the sleeper pick that most people just didn't really keep in the back of their mind. Trapper is the fastest, and you want that as your main staple in the game. But as a beginning player, I do not recommend actually using talent, because it's all based on the abilities within the weapons. Most people don't understand how to use them, and therefore you'll struggle much more because the weaponry is actually very weak on talent.
You sit there and say, well, evasion's really that powerful at 20 compared to the 11 in the talent. That seems pretty ridiculous. Well, there's one thing that you're not taking into consideration, and this is actually going to steamroll me into my next series, which has to do with the fact that in order to increase your awareness, there is a lot of equipment and armor that allows for you to increase also your evasion while you're increasing your awareness. Talent is not like that. Strength is not like that. Intelligence is not like that.
Okay, so what I wanted to do here is break into this video and actually give you guys a full rundown from top to bottom of the best heroes, going all the way through it in a way that makes sense in terms of what you want to do for your team build. So ultimately, what you're looking for when you're building a team is you want a really good intelligence hero, a really good strength hero, and a really good talent hero. I know what I said in my original best team build is that you want the awareness hero. As I've already said multiple times through multiple videos, awareness weapons are not that great. And therefore, it does not need to be a selection for your team. So if you're going to be selecting based off of those three things, what are the best heroes to choose from? The list that you see right here is going to be for console players to start. I'm going to adjust this for PC players with the add of Gladiator and Astronomer here in a second. Right off the top, Scholar is your best intelligence hero, bar none. He's the fastest, has the fastest intel, refocus, and the starting gear that he's got is just better than anything else. Trapper is the second fastest hero in the game and is also the best talent hero in the game. So what this then does is actually creates the void of your strength hero. Ultimately here, you've got a couple of different selections. So what you see here is Hobo and Busker. This is more of a playstyle thing. I prefer to have Busker in master run games when you're doing console. And the reason for that is when you have Hobo to start with Trapper and Scholar, they have very bad weapons. Hobo's weapon can break very easily, and therefore you need to upgrade weapons so fast that it can become a hindrance in a Masters game. I feel Busker is a little bit of a safer pick right out of the gate, but the Busker's gear is actually pretty weak as well too. But you do get some better things like Entertain than you do with Hobo and Distraction. So I kind of prefer to go with Busker, but if you're able to get out of Act 1, Hobo can actually be a better selection for you just for the sheer speed based off of Busker. Now, the reason why I put Hunter in this A slot is not necessarily because you should be selecting Hunter in lieu of Trapper. In fact, I think Trapper is just overall better, and the drop off between Trapper and Hunter is just 78 to 76 when it comes to awareness, and then when you're talking about speed, it goes from 78 to 74. I don't think that's much of a drop off, but if you're trying to do like a solo run, Hunter just ends up being a better selection because you are trying to get to evasion as fast as possible, especially if you're trying to do a solo seller run. The other good thing about Council is the other two heroes that you see in the slot, which is Monk and Woodcutter. I actually think that they're both viable options for strength as well too. Woodcutter just allows for the game to be a little bit easier at the beginning of the game. Justice is an okay ability, not really necessarily that big of a deal. But if you want something to where you have a really good, strong starting weapon to go along with your Trapper and your Scholar, it's an okay pick. He is incredibly slow though, so it ends up becoming a problem down the road. Monk is just kind of your overall jack of trades. He could switch between intelligence and strength weapons at the beginning of the game. If you find something that's a little bit different, let's say you get 2 Goat Wizard staffs in Act 2. So he has a little bit of versatility. I don't necessarily like to play with him. Of course, Monk is also a little bit more up there in terms of versatility because he's actually good for seller runs as well too.
And then kind of just rounding off the rest of them. The problem is Blacksmith is the 5th best out of the 5 for strength heroes. Herbalist is just slower compared to the Scholar. Not really necessarily a good pick for you. If I did actually have a lower than a C bracket, I actually would put Treasure Hunter in that particular bracket because Treasure Hunter is just kind of garbage in general. But the good thing is about this game is it's balanced enough where you can actually play with just about any hero and make it work. But Treasure Hunter is the hardest to absolutely use. And then Minstrel. Again, I think the only kind of quip I have with Mike and Sheldon is I don't think Minstrel is ever really viable. I think Trapper is just better overall for you, especially with the speed. The only thing that people prefer to use, I think at this point now, Minstrel for are Cellar runs, just because the Encourage ability does kind of help you out there. Now let's kind of go through here and do the switch for PC players. As you can tell, it actually has shifted the tier listing quite a bit. What you do see in the top tier now is Scholar just stayed the same, because remember what we're trying to do is we're trying to build intel, we're trying to build strength, and we're trying to build towards talent. The one thing that Gladiator has done is completely messed with the entire strength class. I'm not going to go through all the listings of the players again, but the big thing is you notice that all the pretty much strength heroes just kind of all drop in the list and become almost irrelevant at this point. Dare I say, I could almost push the other strength heroes into the C class because there's no reason for you to even select them. The Gladiator's so fast. It's got better abilities attached to it. And then the secondary thing is here, which is incredibly important, especially if you're trying to do Masters runs, and why I shifted Trapper down and put him in line with Hobo, is that you start off with a 10 damage awareness weapon along with an 11 damage strength weapon. What ends up happening is Hobo actually becomes even more viable in this selection, and you actually shift gears to where the Hobo can be your talent hero. But there's a caveat to this. The one thing that Trapper can be, especially because it mainly runs awareness and talent gear, is it can be weak to a certain degree in Act 1, and if you're super unlucky in Act 2, not getting actual rush weapon. What Hobo can do, it can actually hold on to any type of weapon. So I kind of put Hobo and Trapper as a kind of whatever pick that you want to do there. I feel like you could do either or and be okay with it, because you can wipe out the weakness of Hobo with getting a very good starting weapon there. Or you could just go with Trapper as your kind of safe pick and just kind of mainly run talent throughout the entire game. Astronomer, unfortunately, gets just put at the very bottom here, is because not only would I not select Astronomer over Scholar, I actually would select Herbalist over Astronomer. I don't think Astronomer's ability of Black Hole outweighs anything with the fact that it's actually slower, and the intelligence, I believe, is in line with Herbalist. I would just much rather actually get Party Heal with the Herbalist and also have Gathering Herb in lieu of what the Black Hole gives you. So that kind of gives you a full roundout of what I would do for hero selection, and this goes across any type of level. Let's get back to the rest of the video to where I break down the difference between the selection of abilities and speed. This goes to what I want to tell the devs and the big problem. So what you'll see here is I picked Scholar, Gladiator, and Trapper. They're all high speed heroes. The big issue I had with this game was just the amount of how abilities do not outweigh the importance of speed in this game. And this is very important to kind of hammer out. The one thing that I found just so odd about Gladiator is the glory ability. If you remember me talking about this a little bit in the previous video, so called shot doesn't happen until after you've done your rolls, but glory happens prior to doing your rolls. Imagine if Woodcutter, which is extremely slow compared to Gladiator, had an ability that was really OP. So imagine if you just like
ramped up the ability Justice. So what Justice does is it splashes to the 2 enemies next to him. You have no idea when that's ever going to happen. So it's so unreliable. And because he's so slow, there's no point in taking it. But what if you did something like took Justice and let's say like in non-boss fight, that Justice literally kills all 3 enemies, just eliminates them, but you have no idea when that's going to happen. Would you be more apt to take Woodcutter over Gladiator in the speed? I still think you wouldn't. Now, what if actually that ability Justice was more like Glory and you actually knew when it was going to occur? And you actually had stats on how often that would happen? That would actually make you start thinking of using different heroes, but it's because the abilities have to outweigh the speed aspect of the game. And the real issue is I don't have an issue with speed being meta, especially if FTK2 keeps that same form. But you have to then make the other heroes viable because they're slower. So that slowness, you gotta have something else that comes with it to offset that. And plus it also makes the game a little bit more fun as well too. I hate just mentioning that you need to go speed, and just pick high speed heroes and everything else is kind of irrelevant. That kind of actually dulls down the kind of the intricacies of a game and can actually make it not as fun. So what I would like to see for FTK2 is more impactful abilities. I just want to make it to where like it's not just like a deadlock pick, it just pick something that is speed. But this concludes my final correction video. Hopefully this clarifies any issues you guys may have. I know you guys have had a lot of comments on the videos. I really do appreciate it. And if you guys have any other further discussions you have, feel free to leave them in the comments below, both on this video and the other corrections videos, or just pop into our Discord and see if you have any additional questions. Thank you guys so much. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the corrections videos, and I will talk to you guys again. Take care.